I have a personal connection with this cryptid. The epicenter of the Mothman sightings occurred about a 30-minute drive from where I grew up. However, local folks didn't really talk about it that much, at least back in the 70s and 80s. When I did find out about it, I was like, damn, I drive by that town every time I go to a concert. At any rate, now I know a shit ton about it. Deep in the Appalachian Mountains, there is a legendary creature that has horrified folks for decades. With its glowing red eyes, a massive wingspan, and a humanoid shape, this mysterious entity is known as the Mothman. The Mothman is a cryptid that's been sighted in various parts of the world, but its most famous sightings have taken place in the small town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. In this episode, we'll explore the lore, the sightings, and some possible explanations for the Mothman. And we'll hear from eyewitnesses who have seen the Mothman. We'll even examine the scientific theories that attempt to explain the Mothman's existence. So join me as we uncover the mysteries of the Mothman and attempt to shed some light on one of the most intriguing legends in American folklore. Time to rock and roll, baby! The Mothman sightings paint a very consistent picture of this creature. It's a half-man, half-bird-looking bipedal humanoid. Even though it's called the Mothman, it really doesn't look like a moth. More like a human bat. I guess calling it the Batman would have given the creators at DC Comics a hissy fit. And probably legal ramifications. It's about 7 feet tall and covered in dark fur or feathers. Its arms and legs are human-like with a light covering of feathers. It's got huge glowing red eyes. It has no neck, and its eyes seem to be located in its chest. It's got a 10-foot bat-like wingspan and a thin membrane stretching between each of the fingers. It's also stated by many to have a chilling, blood-curdling shriek. It can't run very well. It clumsily stumbles along the ground like a penguin, but can fly at speeds of up to 100 miles per hour. A few reports say it has huge bird-like feet with muscular human legs. The Mothman is a creature steeped in folklore and legend. The creature first gained notoriety in 1966 when a number of sightings were reported in the vicinity of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Although it has been sighted many times in multiple places around the world before that. I'll get into that later on. Over the years, the legend of the Mothman has grown, with stories and sightings being reported enough to attract worldwide attention. According to the lore, the Mothman is associated with ominous events. In Point Pleasant, many people believed that the Mothman was warning them of an impending disaster. In addition to its association with tragedy and disaster, the Mothman has also been linked to the supernatural. The Mothman's association with the supernatural is one of the most intriguing aspects of its folklore. While many people believe that the creature is a flesh and blood animal, others see it as something far, far more mysterious and otherworldly. Some people believe that the Mothman may be an extraterrestrial being sent to Earth to observe and study human civilization. If so, he's going to be sadly disappointed. After folks reported the Mothman to the local police, they would get a sinister visit from stoic men dressed in black suits. That's right, the MIB. They would intimidate the witnesses into being quiet about their sighting, warning them that if they didn't, something harmful would happen to them. And some feel it's an omen of the apocalypse. Some even speculate that the Mothman may be a demon or a malevolent spirit. It sure as hell looks like one. Some people believe that the creature appears before major events, such as plane crashes, natural disasters, and terrorist attacks, as a warning of impending danger. Others believe that the Mothman is responsible for causing these disasters through a supernatural or psychic power. One of the theories surrounding the Mothman is that it may be a messenger from another dimension. This theory suggests that the creature is not native to our world, but rather from another plane of existence. Some people believe that the Mothman may be a creature that has the ability to move between dimensions, and it chooses to appear in our world to communicate with us. Well, it needs to learn some English then. The idea of the Mothman being a messenger from another dimension is rooted in the creature's elusive and otherworldly nature. Many eyewitnesses describe the Mothman as being unlike any other animal they have ever seen, with strange and eerie features that seem almost otherworldly. Some have suggested that the Mothman's red glowing eyes could be a sign of its interdimensional origins, or it could be for other reasons. Furthermore, some people believe that the Mothman's appearance before disasters and tragic events is not a coincidence. Instead, they see it as a deliberate attempt by the creature to communicate with us and warn us of impending danger, or to pop into our dimension from another dimension and directly create havoc and cause mass casualties. There is no scientific evidence to support the theory that the Mothman is a messenger from another dimension. And what would that scientific evidence be? Interdimensional goo or fourth dimensional ticket stubs? Nonetheless, the hypothesis remains popular among those who are intrigued by the creature's mysterious and elusive nature. Another theory is that the Mothman is a genetic experiment gone wrong. This one's my favorite. According to the theory, the Mothman was an experimental creature created by the government through genetic engineering or some other form of scientific manipulation. Proponents of this theory suggest that the government may have created the Mothman as part of a secret military experiment, or to test the effects of genetic engineering on living organisms. Some have also suggested that the creature may have been created as part of a top secret program to develop a super soldier type of being. That would explain the visits from the Men in Black. Now for the fun part. As I've done in a lot of my previous episodes, I'd like to tell you about some little known sightings of the Mothman. I'll start with the very first sighting I could find on the Mothman. This happened 40 years before the initial Point Pleasant sighting. The collapse of the Shaowen Dam in southeastern China occurred on January 19, 1926. It flooded the surrounding farms in the valley below it with nearly 40 billion gallons of water. The death toll was well over 15,000. Just days before the dam collapsed, many locals described seeing a man-dragon flying around and perched on the wall of the dam. The failure of the dam started at the top when a crack formed in the walkway going across. The area where the crack started was the same area the Mothman was sighted just days earlier. It was described in very much the same way the Mothman of West Virginia was described. And still before all the famous sightings occurred, it was sighted during World War I in Point Pleasant. According to folklorist James Gay Jones, a large bird with the head of a man and a wingspan of at least 12 feet was seen. It appeared just prior to or immediately after a tragic event. By World War I, the Birdman was observed flying over Looneyville. That's really the name of the town. Up Johnson Creek, down Gabe and into Roane County, thence down Elk Valley into Kanawha County. Its monstrous size and dark reddish feathers, which glistened in the sunlight, cast fear in all who saw it. Parents kept their children indoors for a while after the sightings. The creature then made an appearance after World War II. In one incident, 2 different motorists were driving down the highway in 1961 when a gray creature covered in either feathers or fur stepped into the road before flying away straight up into the air just before the cars reached it. On November 1st, 1966, several men from the National Guard Armory at Camp Connerly Road reported seeing a large brown creature in the trees. The guardsmen insisted it looked human-like, but flew from tree to tree. At this point is where most of the websites start their sightings. On November 12, 1966, in Clendenin, West Virginia, 5 men were digging graves for a burial the next morning in a cemetery late at night. Man, that had to be creepy in and of itself. One of the men heard a noise in the trees and looked up. Stunned, he tapped one of the other men on the shoulder and asked, "What the fuck is that?" as he pointed toward the treetops. All the men stopped digging and looked. One of the men dropped his shovel and his cigarette fell out of his mouth. He said, "Oh my God." They saw a brown colored monster staring at them with red glowing eyes. The creature had large wings that unfurled as it quietly glided from tree to tree. The men were unnerved by the shadowy monster watching them at the edge of the cemetery. No shit. They hurried to complete their task before rushing away from the graveyard. The men held strong to the fact that what they saw lift off beyond the trees was no bird. It was a humanoid. On the evening of November 15, 1966, Newell Partridge was watching TV when he noticed strange patterns form on the screen. Then a weird buzzing noise. This was followed by an odd noise coming from outside. His dog started growling at the door. Partridge went outside to investigate with a flashlight. He was startled to discover a shadowy figure with two bright red eyes that he said looked like bicycle reflectors. His German shepherd darted outside, barking ferociously. Partridge quickly tried to call his dog back into the house, but the dog, who was a trained hunting dog, ran off into the night as its barking faded away. Partridge ran into the house to grab his rifle and go after his dog, but was too terrified to go back outside. He never saw his dog again. On that same night, two couples, Roger and Linda, and Steve and Mary, were driving to an old abandoned World War II ammunition plant. Yeah, we know what they were doing. Bow chicka wow wow. On their way there, they noticed a large dog carcass lying on the side of the road. After they arrived, they walked up toward one of the concrete igloos that used to house the ammo. When they got to around 20 feet from the door, they saw a massive, dark-colored 7-foot humanoid with a 10-foot wingspan and glowing red eyes, watching them from the top of the bunker. They all screamed and ran back to the car. Everyone jumped in the car and was screaming for Roger to go, go, go. The winged creature landed on the ground right behind their car with a low thud. Roger gunned the engine of his '57 Chevy and it roared off. Thinking they were in the clear, they relaxed for a second. Linda looked out the passenger window and saw the monster flying right beside the car. Its glowing red eyes pierced through the darkness. She screamed. Roger rammed the gas pedal to the floor and the muscular engine lurched forward. The Mothman was no longer beside the car. Now doing nearly 100 miles an hour on the long, straight stretch of road, Roger figured he shook it. However, seconds later, as he checked his rearview mirror, he saw its bright red eyes still following closely behind. It let out a terrifying screech. He drove frantically for several miles, trying to lose the creature, but it easily kept up. As they passed the area they had just seen the dog carcass on the way there, they noticed it was now gone. Many people believe that the dog carcass they saw was that of Newell Partridge's German Shepherd. Finally, as they reached the city limits of Point Pleasant, it disappeared into the darkness. During the next year, over 100 sightings of the Mothman came pouring in. From everyday Joes to volunteer firefighters to many sheriffs and deputies, all the way up to a circuit judge who reported seeing the Mothman. It ran the gamut, and the sightings were relentless. Some people believed the Mothman was a supernatural being that somehow induced vivid nightmares of death and destruction. According to the podcast lore, people in Point Pleasant began experiencing creepy dreams in the months of October and November of 1967. Folks had visions of Christmas presents floating down the nearby Ohio River. And then there were the nightmares of people drowning. Holy shit! In late November 1967, several people witnessed the Mothman flying around and landing on the top of the Silver Bridge. The bridge went over the Ohio River and connected Point Pleasant, West Virginia to Gallipolis, Ohio. The sightings continued almost daily for 2 weeks until December 15, 1967. That's when the Silver Bridge collapsed during rush hour traffic and Christmas shoppers hurrying home. All 31 cars on the bridge plunged into the icy waters of the Ohio River, while steel beams came crashing down on top of them. Wrapped Christmas presents were seen floating down the river, along with long slicks of dark blood a mile long. In all, 46 people died. However, remarkably, 18 people survived, and 9 of those weren't even injured. Now see, that's some weird Final Destination shit there. The reason for the collapse was due to a faulty eye bar at the top of the bridge, the same area where the Mothman had been sighted many times in the preceding weeks. At this point, most websites and YouTube videos say, well, after the Silver Bridge collapse, the sightings stopped. Well, that's not even close to being true. After that, the sightings did decrease, but didn't stop, as sightings in Ohio suddenly picked up. An eyewitness encountered the Mothman near Alliance, Ohio, one night in 1982. This encounter occurred when the witness and his friends were leaving a party late one night just outside of town. After they got into the car and pulled away, the witness noticed some kind of red lights in his rearview mirror. At first, the witness and his friends assumed it was a car, but it came up way too fast. That's when they realized that the red lights were not car lights, but rather the beady eyes of some kind of creature. The creature was about 10 feet away from the car, and the witnesses and his friends could see the outline of the creature. It was some kind of weird, vaguely shaped human, but it definitely wasn't human. In the witness's words, he saw a body outline of a weird person, not sure what, but not human. The group initially justified their experience as a result of drinking too much. That must have been some really good shine. But one of the friends who witnessed the creature hadn't been drinking. The sober friend in the group saw the same thing his inebriated friends saw that night. A few years later, an artist from Canton, Ohio named Joe encountered the Mothman at least twice during the 1980s. The first time he encountered the creature was when he was about 12. The creature appeared in his doorway in the middle of the night while he was in bed. It appeared to be transparent and had burning red eyes and seemed to be made up of tendrils of a black smoke-like substance. It hovered over the 12-year-old for a minute or two, then laughed in a deep, echoing male voice before disappearing. Joe remembers being paralyzed, unable to move in his bed for a while after the creature disappeared. Joe claims to have encountered the creature a second time when he was 16 years old. He lived in Ravenna, Ohio at the time of his second encounter. This encounter was very similar to the first and also involved paralysis in his bed for what seemed like at least an hour to it. During this episode, he eventually got his strength back and was able to crawl to his mother's room. During Joe's sophomore year at Akron University, he made a series of paintings based on these experiences, which he called the Willies. A fellow student told him that she had encountered the exact same thing as a child. Joe initially thought he had encountered the boogeyman as a child, but decided it was more likely to have been the Mothman after noticing similarities between the creature he encountered in the 1980s and the creature described in the Mothman Prophecies movie, which was released several years later in 2002. This account of the Mothman is interesting for a number of reasons. Unlike most other sightings, which appear outdoors, usually in the woods or forest, this witness encountered the creature inside their own home. It also appeared as a see-through entity, almost like a spirit, unlike the traditional encounters with the creature possessing a solid corporeal form. It's slightly possible, but was not officially confirmed, that this witness experienced sleep paralysis rather than the Mothman. A resident of Columbus, Ohio, encountered the Mothman while hiking with two friends along the forest trails one evening in 2003 as the sun began to set. As they were walking, the three friends heard a noise behind them. When they turned around to see what it was, they saw a terrifying creature. The hiker described the creature as gray and had eyes like the devil. The creature then flew up about 6 feet off the ground and swooped down at the three hikers, almost knocking them over. The hikers ran away down the trail, attempting to get away from the creature, but it followed after them, making a horrible screeching sound, which almost caused one of the hikers to pass out. I think he was just out of shape. The three hikers eventually jumped into a creek in an attempt to lose the creature, and it eventually disappeared back into the woods. Another Ohioan encountered the Mothman in the late summer, early fall of 2003 in the city of Toronto, Ohio, located along the Ohio River. This encounter occurred one night at around 2 a.m. while the witness was driving through the countryside. The driver spotted the creature on a back road outside of town, standing near the right side of the road. The creature was about the same height as an average human male, was whitish gray in color, and had creepy red eyes, consistent with most Mothman sightings. The driver didn't get a good enough look at the creature to notice whether or not it had wings. Probably did. It stood on two legs and crouched down as the driver's car approached, then took off and disappeared into the woods as the car came closer. The observer kept their experience to themselves for fear of being ridiculed for their claims, until a month or two later when they heard that several local kids had a similar sighting in the woods outside of town. The kids described the creature they encountered as tall and pale with glowing red eyes. Sounds like the same thing to me. Around the same time, the observer also heard from a former co-worker who claimed to have found a number of dead dogs arranged in a pile near the same location where the sightings of the creature had occurred. The most recent sighting of the Mothman in the area was on November 20th, 2016. A man who recently moved to Point Pleasant and was unaware of the notorious legend captured a photo of something that looks very similar to the Mothman. He was driving along State Route 2 and saw something jump from tree to tree. He pulled off the road and snapped some pictures. In the pictures, the creature appears to have wings with pointed tips and long legs bent at an awkward angle. That's a pretty good shot. The pictures are very intriguing and do match up with descriptions of previous sightings. He was adamant that the pictures had not been doctored and admitted that he had no idea how to do that anyway. You'd be surprised how many people don't know how to work Photoshop. And more recently, the Mothman seems to have migrated to the Chicago area, with hundreds of documented encounters from 2007 to 2022. I did a video on the Chicago Mothman not too long ago. I'll have it come up at the end of the video so you can check it out. Yeah, it's pretty fucking weird. There have been several explanations offered as a reason for people seeing the Mothman. Here we go. One possible explanation given by Dr. Robert Smith of West Virginia University was that folks were seeing a sandhill crane. The big bird isn't native to the area and has a red patch covering the top part of its head. It's possible, but rarely happens, that when they're migrating south from Canada, they could get off course and end up in West Virginia for a spell, confusing folks as to what they were seeing, since the big bird is not normally seen there. Well, now it's time to debunk the debunker. First, no sandhill cranes were reported to Fish and Wildlife authorities in 1966 or 1967. Also, sandhill cranes' average height is 3 to 5 feet, with an average wingspan of 5 to 7 feet. This is nowhere near the 7-foot tall, 10-foot wingspan of the Mothman. They also have thin, stick-like legs, not thick, muscular, human-like legs. And to put some lube on her to finish it off, its eyes don't glow when light hits them in the dark. And the single red patch of feathers on its head would be unnoticeable in the dark. So, it's absolutely not a sandhill crane. Another interpretation for the Mothman is that it's just owls, you idiots. Barred owls and great horned owls are the largest owls native to that area. They're large species of owls, and their eyes do glow when light hits them. However, barred owls have an average height of 16 to 24 inches, with a wingspan of 3.5 to 4 feet. Their cruising speed is 20 to 30 miles an hour. Their hunting strategy is to perch and wait for prey, then dive down on them. They don't chase their prey and come nowhere near to flying 100 miles per hour. So it can't be a barred owl. Great horned owls are pretty much the same. Their average height is 18 to 25 inches, with a wingspan of 3.5 to 4.5 feet. Their cruising speed is a little faster than barred owls at 20 to 40 miles per hour, and they can dive for a short distance at 80 miles per hour, which is closer, but it still pales in comparison to the speed and size of the Mothman. On top of that, their eyes glow yellow when light hits them, not red. So, it's not a great horned owl. That brings us to yet another explanation for the Mothman: mass hysteria. Mass hysteria is a phenomenon where a group of people experience similar physical or emotional symptoms that have no clear medical or environmental cause. Mass hysteria can occur in a variety of settings, including schools, workplaces, religious gatherings, and even entire communities. How this applies to the Mothman is that after the first few sightings are publicly put out there, other people start seeing the Mothman when they're really not. They're either seeing something else or completely imagining it. Honestly, this could explain some sightings of the Mothman, but absolutely not all of them, especially the first few that spotted it. Mass hysteria requires a lot of people to see and feel the same thing. So that one, I'll say, is partially correct. As the sun sets on the quiet town of Point Pleasant, the legend of the Mothman lives on. This mysterious creature has captivated the imaginations of people around the world, with sightings reported in numerous countries and cultures. While some dismiss the Mothman as a mere myth or legend, others continue to believe in its existence and continue to see it. The strange encounters and unexplained phenomena associated with the Mothman have sparked countless discussions, debates, and investigations. Despite the many theories and interpretations, one thing remains clear. The Mothman is a fascinating enigma that will continue to intrigue and mystify us for many, many years to come. And perhaps one day we will finally uncover the truth about this elusive creature and the mysteries it holds. So, the next time you're out in the woods in the dead of night, keep your eyes open. Listen for strange screeching sounds and leave your car door unlocked. You never know when you might have to make a hasty escape from the clutches of the Mothman.